All right, so I'm going to start today's class, okay? And we have to cover the last part of the unit. Well, actually, this is the last unit, so we have to cover the last part of the course. That is going to be, well, Unit 4 and other tests related to the Cambridge test. It means that we are supposed to practice now. If it's not going to be possible, perhaps, all right? Well, I'm going to give you some instructions, and that's what you have to practice by yourself. All right. But let's try to again see some details before actually going to this presentation itself. And yes, I think that's it. So let's do it. All right. We covered the TOEFL. We know how it works. It's like a speaking task, right? That requires you to organize your ideas, to give a specific answer, right? And you have to choose one option, right? Among other options that you have. Usually you have two. And you have to support that decision, right? You have to say, I prefer this, or I would do this or that because of the following reasons, right? And you have to start, let's say, giving all the examples that you can. Usually you give two, one per reason that you choose, and also facts. If it's possible for you to mention just one fact, it's also going to be good. But that's the logic. Try to remember that it has an organization. It means in terms of steps that you have to follow. And the first step is a short introduction in which you only show what's your decision. And also you have to write, mention, if you have the time, right? You have two options, as you can see here. If you feel that you have the time and you have everything very clear, then work with the first one, right? And you can say, I prefer this because of this and that. But sometimes it can take some time because you have to mention, I don't know, longer ideas. So you have to be careful with that. So if you feel that it's very straightforward and the number of words you're going to use don't exceed like something that is going to surpass these 10 seconds, right? Then do it, right? You don't have to worry about it. But again, if the ideas are too long or you know you're going to mention other things over there, then don't mention those things. It's better if you only say, I prefer this because of the following reasons, and that's it. That's your introduction, right? Or I prefer that due to the following motives, and that's it. Okay, and then you go to the next part that you know that it's well, mentioning those reasons. The first reason is going to be more or less 15 seconds. You have to mention that. You have to give an example or a fact. And again, the next seconds are going to be for the following reasons. So you usually have two, right? Two good reasons that are going to be supported by good ideas to show that you are right and that your decision was the best. And in the last part, remember, this is only you have the time because sometimes you don't. Well, you are going to give a short conclusion, like, and that's why I believe that this is the best option, and period, right? Just to make the examiner feel that you had that organized and you got to say everything you wanted to say in 45 seconds, which is pretty good. But if you don't get to do it, this is not going to be like a very big mistake or something you have to be worried about. Because I believe that there are some people that can get the perfect score without any type of conclusion. So it is good if you don't do it. But that can be an extra if you get to, well, mention a conclusion over there. We got to practice, right, in two different classes. So I believe that you are more or less familiar with it. Here you have some words that you can use. For example, in the introduction, right, you say, I prefer this for, because, as, since, then you mention the reasons. If you want to mention the reasons with interesting words, you can say and, additionally, besides, also, to make some changes, right? And then, sorry, in the steps, right, 2 and 3 that are related to how you support your two reasons, you have these words, right? And that's a recommendation that I gave you. You remember, sometimes it feels like you're talking about the same thing. So to make sure and to be clear, right, is important to use these transitional words to understand very well what the first reason was and what the second was. So you can start with or firstly or first, right? First, I believe that this is important because of this and that. For example, right? So you first use these transitional words. You show not example, sorry, your reason, explain why, and then you show your example with these possible words. For example, as a matter of fact, in fact, to illustrate, right? And then you mention that personal example that you got. And then you go to the next reason, right? Very quickly. And you say second, secondly, afterwards, following to that. So it has to be clear that now you're going to go to the next reason. And you have to manage, right, the tone of your voice and how you speak fast or make it that slower in order to again make the examiner realize that that was important information, and then you're going to the second part, right? And after you say that, you mention the second reason plus well, some justification, a short one, and finally one more time an example using a word that you didn't use for the first step, oh sorry, for the second step, because this is the third one if you mention the second reason. And then the last step that is optional, once again, you can say something like this. And that's why, because of all that information, due to that, and so on. And that's advisable, of course, for these short presentations. I mean, these short answers that you have to give. But again, if you're working, for example, these long ones are related to the final presentation you are going to have. You have to use, right, these stronger words such as finally, in conclusion, to conclude, all in all, to sum up, because you're going to say more things at the end, right? So that's a review of the TOEFL. Well, one task that the TOEFL is going to require you to complete. And now we're going to go to Cambridge, right? Um, Here again, it's important that you watch the class then, because you have to, actually, I'm going to show you something first as I'm explaining. You have to record some, well, um, answers. Let's say yes, of course, they are going to be answers. So you have to record your answers the same way you did it for the TOEFL and for the previous weeks, because that's how we are evaluate, right, in class activities. So it's very important that you can do it. Now, what we're going to do, if you, that's not the one over here. If you go to Google Classroom, you go to classwork, you can find 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, you can find 4 prompts. It means here you have the instructions and what you have to record, but I'm going to guide you now. Today we're going to work with 2, and on Friday we finish with the last 2. And that's it. Okay, that's going to be the practice. Again, as I'm not going to be working with you, perhaps I'm going to be finishing the class before, but I'm going to make sure here that you understand everything and very well what you have to do. All right, so first, let's actually see one of these prompts. All right, here you have. So let me see if this is going to be the first one. Yes, it is going to be the first one. Let me just verify also that here. This is the candidate. Yes, so it's the same. I'm going to open also my PDF so that, no. Yes, this is the first one. So it's in order, right, from left to right, and the ones above are the first ones and the ones below are the last ones. So let's read. In situation, it says this: I am your friend and I have a problem. Find out what my problem is and offer me some good advice. Okay, so usually in this test, you're going to be with the examiner and you're going to interact because you're going to ask him or her some questions. And these are the questions. For example, it says, right, you should look at the pictures below and ask. So here you have, right, a child, a kid. Here you have a computer, and here you have something that represents time. Okay, so if you have that in mind, then you go here and you should have an interaction with me. But again, in order to record this, you are not going to have the interaction with me. you are going to record those questions, but in a different way. Okay, so you're going to have 1 minute, and in the first 10 seconds, instead of the introduction, if you remember, right, introduction for the TOEFL, in the first 10 seconds, you are going to record these questions in a different way. Okay, so for example, instead of, I don't know why it happens, instead of what is the problem, you're going to ask, what's wrong? What's happening? Right? You look bad, or just what's wrong? What happened? Okay, that's a way to ask about something that happened, about a problem, right? Again, it's not exactly the same, but it's similar and you can get the same information. So instead of what's the problem, you can ask what happened, what's wrong, right? Do you feel okay, right? You look sad, or you look bad. Again, you can add some extra things, but it has to be quick because it's going to be just the introduction. Okay, so the first part, what's wrong? What happened? Then instead of what are some possible solutions, you can use complex ideas like, could you please tell me what some of the options that you have are? Right? Could you please tell me what of the options that you have are? So that's a different way to ask that question. And the same, what are the disadvantages of each solution? So you can ask something similar. Like, once again, you can add an embedded question, right? Do you mind telling me, for example, right? Or would you mind telling me what what the negative, or right, what the negative aspects of those options are, right? And that's it. So those are ways to ask that in different words. So what's wrong? Could you please tell me what are the that you have in mind, making something up, and negative aspects of those options. Okay, those three. Again, I changed one more time, but that's what you have to do. You have to ask these three questions differently at the beginning. Then after asking those questions, you're going to do this. When you have all the information, actually, of course, first you're going to listen. Here I am going to read something that you don't have on Google Classroom. Okay, I'm going to turn off, actually, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to read something for you, because I'm going to tell you the problem, I'm going to tell you the possible solutions, and I'm going to tell you the disadvantages. All right. And um, and yeah, after you listen to that, again, you record first the questions, sorry, the answers. No, actually, yes, the questions. You have to record the questions, and then after words, you are going to do the following. It says, when you have all the information you need, explain which solution you think is the best and why. Be ready to explain why you didn't choose the other solution. Okay, remember to use information you learn from asking questions to explain your final choice. Okay, so you have to take notes, and you have to use what I'm telling you to give me the answer, a good answer. So let's try to work the first one, and I'm going to read this for you, and you are going to take notes. Okay, give me 1 second. I am going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm only going to share. No, actually, you don't need the audio neither. I'm just going to read it for you. Okay, so this is the first one. I believe that you can listen to this. All right. So one more time. Again, we're going to suppose that we have these interactions. Okay, so let's pay attention. Let's take notes. My 10-year-old son wants a cell phone so that he can text message all his friends. We think this is a bad idea because he will be distracted in school and his grades may suffer as a result. Okay, that's the answer, sorry, for the first question. Now remember, for the second question that you asked, what are some possible solutions? These are the solutions, the options, right? The choices that you got. So option number 1, tell him to just message or email his friends on the computer at home. Okay, that was number one. And option or solution number two, he has to wait until he's 12 to get a cell phone, right? So that was about question number two. Question number three, it was what are the disadvantages of each solution, right? Negative aspects, or the cons, right? The pros and the cons. For number one, for option number one, this is the disadvantage. He might keep other family members from using the computer and needs supervision. That's for number one. And disadvantage for number two, he will feel left out and might not like going to school. Right? That's it. Now, I'm going back. I'm going to share my screen. And there you go. Okay, so that's it. Now you have all that information. Now remember, you have 1 minute. The first 10 seconds for I'm going to use actually two things to explain that to you. And I have a prompt. I have actually, let me find like a template for this. Okay, this is the Cambridge practice. Okay, good. So remember the first 10 seconds, right, for embedded questions. So again, we're going to pretend that you're going to look for this one, do this for you. Not everything, I'm not going to do it at once, but the first 10 seconds for the questions, right? So 10 seconds, let's see the questions. Remember, you have to ask something different. So what's wrong? What are some options that you have for that? What are some negative aspects for those options? Okay, so that's it. 7 seconds. I ask those questions in a different way. Okay, you don't need to change a lot, or you can change that a lot, but you have to keep the essence, of course, right? But you have to make some changes to play with synonyms and to play with some alternatives. Then, after you got that, remember you listen to that. So the rest of the time, the 50 and more seconds that you're going to have are going to be to explain using something like this. Okay, so in the first part is going to be like, in my opinion, right, or personally, I believe that the first option is the best. All right, and you can say, remember, it was to give him access to the computer, right, so that he can text and, well, have conversations with his friends using the computer. Or, right, again, perhaps I'm giving you the answer over here, but you have to record it on your own way. And the second one is, right, yes, give that cell phone, but waiting until a certain period of time, right? I'm not going to mention that one so that you can listen, and let's see, and I'm going to be able to see also how you manage those details. All right, so I can say, I believe that giving access to the computer is the best option for him, right? Because he has to learn that he cannot have access to all the gadgets and devices at this age because it's dangerous, right? So you can see the same things that you mentioned, or also, and of course, actually not all, also, but you have to use information from the the well, information that I gave you. Again, I'm not going to be exact with that because I'm going to give you the answers right here. So that's not my intention here. You have to work that on your own. So don't pretend that I said some things. Okay. So again, in my opinion, in my opinion, or personally, I believe that it's better to give him access to the computer to text his friends, because as you said, and again, this is not something I said, but I'm going to make that up. As you said, it's dangerous to have a cell phone at that age, and he has to understand that, right? For instance, so you give a short example. For instance, once I had a nephew, right, that had access to a cell phone, but I don't know, right? His parents found out that he was receiving messages from strangers, and that was very dangerous. Okay, so again, if you realize it's not that far away from the TOEFL strategy, or way of working, because you have to first give your opinion, explain why, give an explanation, and also as right as mentioned, that's already something I did. It's right according to you, right? Again, what I said, it can be dangerous to have a cell phone at that age. And again, right, I'm making that up. That's not true. Then the second part, but that should be from second 11 to 35. Okay, so 25 seconds. So see how it goes. All right. My opinion is that it's not a good idea to have a cell phone. As you said, it is dangerous for someone of his age. Also, I believe that waiting is going to be a good thing for him. He's going to learn to be patient and to have access to things age that it's going to be better for him. All right. So again, I went around and around, but in this situation, an example. But I'm going to do it then in the second part. But I rather stop my first part over there to have less than 35 seconds. Now, the next part, this is different from the TOEFL. You have to mention the other option and why you didn't choose that one. I mean, why you believe it is not the best option. So you can say, contrary to that, right, the other option is not a good idea because if you only wait until that age, that is still a very early age, right? It is going to be a mistake because he's not going to be ready to use a cell phone. And also you're not going to give him access to the computer, which is going to make him feel a little bit, again, I don't know, divided, or is going to make him feel like away from friends. Okay, so I'm making that up again, and that you mentioned. So once again, I'm not going to use real information or not everything that I said for you, so that you can use that real information yourself. So as for the other option, it is not a good idea to wait until that age because he's not still going to be ready. So that's not the best thing to do. Also, if you're not going to give him access to the computer, he's going to feel that he's away from his friends, and that's going to be very negative. All right. So over there also, I didn't have to give the example, but I'm going to try to do it now. Remember, it's only 1 minute because the conclusion, once again here, it is going to be optional. All right, let's see if I have the time. For example, my nephew got access to the cell phone and it was not definitely a good idea for him. All right, so at least I got to mention something and I'm finishing there. All right, 58 seconds. So once again, if you realize this is not far away from what we were doing with the TOEFL, we have more time, 1 minute, because we don't only have to support the idea that we agree with, but we also have to explain why the other option was not the best. That's why we need some extra time, right? And the example is going to be important. Again, I didn't get to include that. I'm going to try to do it once again because it's important. I got to do it at the end, but it was not very well explained. It was very fast so that I don't use more than this minute. All right, so I'm going to try to do it once again and let's see how it goes. All right, and again, here you have to try to use this time. This is not a rule. You can use more, right? You can use more, you can use less, but it's the thing that you have to try to do. Okay, and again, I'm getting confused here because I'm trying to use information that I didn't mention so that you can listen to that recording and say some extra things. But I'm trying to say some other things that come to me to my mind. But you don't have to do that because you have to use the real information that you heard, okay, from me. So it's going to be because you only mention what I said and add some extra things to that. Okay, but let's try one more time. Let's see how it goes. And this is the logic that you have to follow. So what's wrong? What options do you have for that type of problem? And what are the negative aspects for those problems? In my opinion, it is better to give him access to the computer because he's going to be able to have conversations with his friends, and he's going to understand that it's not a good age to have a cell phone. For example, I got a nephew who also had this problem, but he was able to use a cell phone. But he received some messages from strangers, and that was very, very dangerous for him. I don't believe that keeping our wait until the age that you mentioned is a good idea because he's not going to be happy about it. He's going to feel that he's away from his friends, and that's definitely going to be negative for him. As you mentioned, once again, he's going to feel left out, and that's a negative feeling for any kid at school. And because of all those reasons, I really believe that giving access to the computer is the best option. All right, good. Now, I feel that I got to say more important things over here, including examples and explanations, things that the person mentioned, right? And that's what we have to aim to. Okay, we have to aim to say those details to give a complete and yes, mainly a complete answer. Right, that's going to be the word, a complete answer. So that's it. Again, following this logic, now I'm going to pretend that you're here working with me. So first, you should have with this structure in, let's say, 30 seconds to organize some ideas. Okay, so try to work with me. Let's have the 30 seconds, and then I'm going to give you 1 minute to record. Okay, so here we start with the 30 seconds. Okay, now let's have 1 minute to record this answer. Remember, you can follow this structure. It's not obligatory to, respect these exact seconds that you have here. And remember, the conclusion is optional. But again, if you listen to the answer with conclusion and without conclusion, it feels that you were controlling the situation, that you organized your ideas pretty well, and well, that's always going to be positive. All right, so please, let's have 1 minute and we record our response. All right. So sorry, I was finishing some things, taking advantage of this time, but I'm going to go now to the next one. Remember, this is one, we only have one more, and it's exactly the same. Okay, this is what we have to do. We have to organize our ideas using the information that we are listening, right? And again, and that has to be done in 1 minute using the structure that I just showed. But it says, right, let's read now the steps that you know that we worked here with me, but just to have everything clear. So ask the three questions in a different way, right? Remember in the first 10 seconds, it's important to show that you can formulate and reformulate the questions. Okay, this is again to show that you can manage the language pretty well, that you know synonyms, that you know alternatives, and that you can ask anything or say anything in different ways. All right, that's when you see that you are working with the language in a good way and you can, well, consider yourself a person, right, that speaks that language. Then use complex structures like embedded questions, which you might if I asked you about. So that's pretty formal, okay? But that's an example. So try to look for different ways, right, to ask the same questions. I mean, the same content with different words. That is going to be very important. Step two, right, that's what you have to do in my case at the beginning. Listen very carefully to the answers for each question. Remember, I'm going to read those answers for you. So if not taking is allowed, in this case, it is allowed. Okay, you can take notes, write important words and adjectives. If not, sometimes, all right, if you take the Cambridge and all right, anytime in the future, sometimes you're not going to be allowed to take notes. So you have to remember, you have to bear in mind, right, important informations, important reasons, and disadvantages to use in your future responses. Step three, state your opinion following this order, right? And it's what I did for you. So the first part, give your opinion by mentioning what the best option is, right? In my opinion, personally, I believe that this is the best option because of this and that. For example, I remember that blah, 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 as you mentioned, and that's it, right? The first part. Then tell why it is the best option. I already did that. And tell why the other option was not the best, right? Contrary to this, the other option does not give us these possibilities because of this and that. So you have to explain why the other option was not the best for you. That's why, again, you have more time because you have to explain two things. And step four, this is something that we didn't do. We're going to try to do this on Friday, okay? Because after this, let's say, answer that you're going to give, you are going to be asked questions, okay? So you are going to be asked the questions in this case. You don't ask them, you are asked those questions. When you answer to those questions, you have to be concise. You don't have to give too much extra information, right? Just go to the point and answer about it. And use some intensifiers and embellish your speech, right? So again, make it interesting, make it powerful in the sense again that you say some interesting things with words that remark what you want to say, right? That highlight that meaning. And that's it. Again, something interesting, something very well done, embellished with interesting words that you know how to use. And that's it. These are some tips, but the tips again are summarized here. So I'm going to open the second one. All right, that was the first one, right? The second one should be this one, CTCE 2009. Let's just verify that it is. Sorry, I'm going to open this. And yes, this is the one. Okay, so let's read once again. First, I am your friend and I have a problem. Find out what my problem is and offer me some good advice. Use questions that compare your options. What are the disadvantages for each option? Then you know what you have to do. And well, first, actually, let's look at the pictures, right? Here you have a girl. Look at that hair. Then you have two pictures, one with an X right in the mouth of that person, and one without that X, right? So you can start interpreting, and this you perhaps don't get to start listening to the explanation. So the same, I'm going to read this for you, and then you have to tell me the best option and the option that you don't think is the best, right? So one more time, when you have all the information you need, you should offer some advice to help solve the problem. You can choose one of the solutions or create your own solution to the problem. Remember to use information you learn by asking questions to explain your final choice. All right, so let's do the same. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I am going to read this for you. Okay, so here I go. Okay, so pay attention, please take notes, and you're going to use this information to give your answer. So, what's the problem? This is the answer for question number one. My best friend is excited about her brand new hairstyle. However, I think it looks terrible. I'm sure the next time we see each other, we'll want to know what I think. I'm not sure what to tell her. Okay, that's the problem. Now, about the options, the second question, this is option number one. Don't tell her what I really think. I could tell her that it looks very nice. Okay, that's option number one. And option number two, I could be honest and tell her that I think that it looks really bad. Okay, that's option number two. Now the disadvantages for those options. Disadvantage for number one, it would be a lie to tell her it looks nice. We are always very honest with each other, and I don't want to lie to her. Option number two, well, disadvantages for number two, I may hurt her feelings because we are very close. She might feel bad about her new hairstyle or get mad at me. All right, and that's it. I'm sharing my screen once again. Okay, good. Now, again, you can use this over here. And please, first you have to reformulate the questions, 10 seconds, right? Or for actually, before that, right? 30 seconds for organizing your ideas. The same way you did with the TOEFL, right? You can write some words about the best option, reason, and the example. The option is not that is not the best, and you have to mention something because as I am mentioning, for example, right, disadvantages. It's a good idea to mention some disadvantages that I'm well telling you because that's what they require. Okay, you have to use the information that you hear. If not, of course, it's easy to say anything that comes to your mind. All right, so try to use the information, and of course, to support the best option, perhaps you don't have a lot of information. That's why you can use a personal example and some ideas of yours to well to support that. So please, 30 seconds to first organize our ideas. All right, so now we have please 1 minute. Follow this structure again or try to organize something similar to this. Remember 1 minute to restate or reformulate the questions, to mention the best option and why it is the best option with an example, and why the other option is not the best, why it is not the best, and mention some disadvantages that I mentioned myself. And the conclusion, if you have the time, again, that's the best option. So let's do it, please. 1 minute, and we Okay, so that's it. Again, this is the first part of today's practice. I'm going here. Once again, remember that then we worked the first two prompts, or with the first two prompts that you can find on Google Classroom. Unit number 4 says material ECC Speaking Test B2, and it's ECC 2013 and ECC 2009, but the ones that are here on the top. Down below, you have another one that is 2009, but that's a one that is different. We're going to work on that on Friday. This is the last one. Okay, it has a different name, like sample B. That's it. We are going to keep practicing on Friday with the same structure, with the same ideas, so that you have some practice with this type of tests and you feel ready, perhaps, or at least you have an idea for when you take this test, if you take it in the future, or at least again for practicing and for improving your speaking skills and even listening skills. All right, remember please that you have until Friday to upload these recordings. It means today's recordings and Friday's recordings, plus the recording related to the 9 new words, plus definitions, plus examples, right? Also on Friday, you're going to have your final oral presentation that should be 15 minutes about any topic you want, but that has a very specific structure, that you can once again get a unit for, upload your final oral presentation, and here you have all the instructions. Here you have the structure in detail that you have to follow, right? 3 steps per section, and the rubric with all those criteria for you to take into account, right? So for me, then that's it for today. I'll see you on Friday to keep practicing a little bit more with this Cambridge task, and to have your oral presentation, and also to finish the course and everything, right, related to the classes with me. I don't know, perhaps you're going to continue with prep courses, right, for the TOEFL. Well, you're going to do it with someone different, and if that's the case, again, try to take the best out of it, and I'm sure you're going to do it great. All right, I'll see you then on Friday again.